In Mexico, the army has confirmed the death of one of the country's most feared drug lords, known as El Mencho, caught and killed in a dawn raid.
A notorious drug cartel leader was killed in Mexico.
We finally reached the exact spot where we think El Mencho, one of the world's biggest drug traffickers, was killed on Sunday morning.
May 1st, 2015. The state of Jalisco, Mexico. A Mexican military helicopter is flying over the municipality of Villa Purificacion as part of a coordinated operation.
Mexico's government claims the new generation cartel of Jalisco used rocket-propelled grenades last Friday to bring down this army helicopter
Against a cartel convoy on the ground below. Then someone fires a rocket-propelled grenade at it. The helicopter goes down.
We heard a boom, like a bomb. They took down the aircraft. They took it down.
8 soldiers are killed. No cartel in modern Mexican history had ever done that. Shooting down a military aircraft isn't just an act of violence.
There is no criminal group capable of beating the determination of citizens and their government to build a society free of violence.
It's a declaration. It says, "We have weapons you didn't think we had. We will use them. And we do not care what comes next." The organization that fired that rocket was the Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación. The man behind it was Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, known everywhere as El Mencho.
New Generation Cartel, CJNG, and was considered Mexico's most powerful cartel lord.
In the decade that followed, CJNG became what many analysts considered the most dangerous criminal organization in the Western Hemisphere. They operated in 27 of Mexico's 32 states. They had a presence in over 30 countries. They pioneered the use of weaponized drones in cartel warfare. They built their own armored fighting vehicles. They attempted to assassinate the police chief of Mexico City in broad daylight.
Mexico City has been gunned down in broad daylight in a central area of the capital. Authorities say it's likely they were shot by a gunman riding on a motorcycle.
El Mencho evaded capture for over a decade. This is his story, and this is how it ended. Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes was born in 1966 in Michoacán. He grew up poor. That part is consistent across virtually every major figure in this world. What makes El Mencho's background different is what he did before the cartel. He was a cop, a Jalisco state police officer in the early 1990s. He understood how law enforcement operated from the inside, how investigations were structured, how intelligence was gathered, how operations were coordinated. That institutional knowledge would become one of his most valuable assets. He also had time in the United States. Arrested in California on heroin distribution charges in the early 1990s. Served time. Deported. It's a detail that tends to get buried in the bigger narrative. But it matters. He had direct exposure to U.S. law enforcement methods, U.S. markets, and the distribution networks that would eventually make CJNG's operation so effective. After deportation, he moved into the Milenio cartel in Jalisco.
El Mencho, head of the Jalisco New Generation cartel, began his involvement in drug trafficking in the 1990s in Michoacán as a member of the Valencia Group or the Millennium Cartel.
When that organization fractured following the arrest of its leadership, El Mencho didn't wait around. Around 2010, he founded his own organization. He called it the Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación. Most cartels in Mexico operate on a model that is, at its core, about commerce. Move product, control territory, bribe what you can, fight what you can't bribe. CJNG operated differently. They operated on a military doctrine. From the beginning, El Mencho structured CJNG less like a criminal enterprise and more like an insurgent force. Strict hierarchy, uniformed units, coordinated tactical operations. members trained in jungle warfare and small unit tactics. Former military and police recruited specifically for their training, not just their willingness to use violence. The result was an organization that, when it decided to fight, fought in a way that Mexican security forces were not prepared for. In the hours after the helicopter came down in 2015, CJNG didn't retreat. They escalated. They simultaneously attacked police convoys across multiple municipalities in Jalisco. Coordinated ambushes, multiple locations, the same window of time. They blocked highways across the state using burning vehicles to prevent military reinforcement. They deployed narco blockades in over a dozen cities simultaneously. It was a military operation, planned, coordinated, executed across an entire state at once. The Mexican government deployed the army. CJNG kept going. Shooting down a helicopter requires a specific kind of weapon. In CJNG's case, RPG-7 rocket-propelled grenades. These are military-grade weapons. They don't come from gun shows or straw purchases at U.S. firearms dealers. They come from military stockpiles, corrupt supply chains, black market networks that move weapons the same way cartels move drugs. CJNG's arsenal went well beyond RPGs.
Amount of weapons, RPGs, 50 calibers, weapons that basically had his own SWAT team.
Barrett .50 caliber anti-material rifles, grenade launchers, Claymore-style improvised explosive devices, and armored vehicles they built themselves. They called them monstruos, monsters. Welded steel plates over the frames of pickup trucks and SUVs, mounting .50 caliber machine guns on top. Not factory built, custom, constructed in workshops and deployed like light armored fighting vehicles in contested territory. When CJNG moved into Michoacán, they moved with convoys of these vehicles. It looked less like a cartel operation and more like a light infantry assault. The Mexican military eventually began seizing them. Photographs spread across the internet. The message was deliberate. We built this ourselves. Imagine what we bought. In 2018, CJNG introduced something no cartel had used in combat before. Weaponized drones, not military drones. Modified consumer quadcopters, fitted with C4 explosive charges or repurposed fragmentation grenades, flown over targets and detonated remotely. The first documented incidents were in Guanajuato, targeting a police station and a military checkpoint. No mass casualties in those early attempts. The technology was crude, the delivery imprecise. But the intent was clear, and the capability improved quickly. By 2020, Mexican security forces were documenting dozens of drone attacks annually attributed to CJNG and affiliated groups. Police were targeted, checkpoints were targeted, rivals were targeted. The drones were small enough to avoid standard detection, cheap enough to be expendable, and effective enough to change tactical decisions for anyone operating in CJNG territory. The U.S. military had been dealing with ISIS, using the same tactic in Syria and Iraq since 2016. Now it was happening 90 miles from the Texas border. June 26, 2020, Mexico City. Omar Garcia Harfuch, the city's Secretary of Security, was traveling through the Lomas de Chapultepec neighborhood, one of the wealthiest districts in the capital, when CJNG operatives opened fire.
The sound of gunfire and explosions rocked the Mexican capital in the early hours of Friday morning, when gunmen wielding high-caliber weapons attacked Mexico City's police chief.
They used Barrett .50 caliber rifles, multiple shooters, a grenade. 2 of Garcia Harfuch's bodyguards were killed.
Authorities have confirmed that at least 2 police officers were killed in the shootout, as well as 1 bystander.
A bystander died. Garcia Harfuch himself was shot 3 times and survived, attempting to assassinate the security chief of Mexico City. in broad daylight, in a wealthy residential neighborhood, in the middle of the morning. CJNG claimed responsibility almost immediately. They posted a Narco manta, a public banner, accusing Garcia Harfuch of working with rival cartels against them. The attack demonstrated two things simultaneously: that CJNG had intelligence on high-value government targets and the operational capacity to act on it, and that they were willing to conduct operations in the capital itself, something most cartels historically avoided to prevent the kind of unified government response that ends organizations. El Mencho calculated that the message was worth the risk. CJNG was among the first cartels to understand social media as a strategic asset. They posted constantly videos of armed columns moving through territory, executions of rivals, recruitment content, propaganda addressed directly to the Mexican government, to rival organizations, and to the public. The production quality varied. Some of it was raw phone footage. Some of it was edited with music and graphics that would not be out of place in an actual military recruitment video. The messaging was always consistent. We are everywhere. We are organized. We are not afraid of you. It was, in its way, a sophisticated information operation run by a drug cartel. Whatever CJNG's profile looked like in 2015, it expanded significantly when they moved into fentanyl. The economics of fentanyl are unlike any drug that came before it. A kilogram of cocaine might retail for $30,000 in the United States. A kilogram of fentanyl, which is roughly 100 times more potent than morphine by weight, can be pressed into hundreds of thousands of counterfeit pills, each sold for $10 to $30. The math is not complicated. CJNG, alongside the Sinaloa cartel, became the primary suppliers of fentanyl to the US market. Precursor chemicals from China, synthesis and pressing in Mexico, distribution through networks that had been in place for decades. The DEA has stated publicly that CJNG and Sinaloa are responsible for the vast majority of fentanyl entering the United States. In 2023 alone, fentanyl killed over 74,000 Americans. CJNG's revenue had no ceiling anymore. For over a decade, El Mencho was the most wanted man in Mexico. The US government offered $10 million for information leading to his arrest.
That's why US authorities put a $15 million bounty on his head and eventually supplied intelligence that helped kill him.
One of the largest bounties in DEA history. He stayed free. Part of that was operational security that rivaled anything El Chapo used. He moved constantly, rarely used phones, surrounded himself with people who had actual law enforcement and military training and understood exactly how surveillance operations worked. Part of it was his health. El Mencho suffered from serious kidney disease and diabetes. He required regular medical treatment while in hiding. That dependency on a trusted medical network kept his circle small, and a small circle is harder to penetrate. And part of it was the same reality that protected El Chapo for 13 years. The Mexican government, at various levels, was not always fully committed to finding him. But everything that keeps you hidden eventually creates a vulnerability. For El Mencho, it was someone close to him. February 20th, 2026. Mexican military intelligence tracked the movements of a trusted associate. That associate was connected to a romantic partner of El Mencho's. Surveillance data showed the associate had transported the partner to a property inside the Tapalpa Country Club, an upscale gated residential development in the mountain municipality of Tapalpa, Jalisco. El Mencho was believed to be there. Before dawn on February 22nd, 2026, Mexican armed forces moved on the property. What followed was hours of gun battles. The operation triggered immediate retaliatory violence across multiple states. Cartel members hijacked and burned vehicles, attacked gas stations and businesses, deployed tire spikes across roadways, engaged security forces in armed confrontations that spread outward from Jalisco as news of the raid reached the organization. El Mencho was wounded during the operation. He died from those wounds while being transported. 15 years after he founded CJNG. 11 years after he shot down a military helicopter and showed Mexico what kind of organization he was building.
One of his romantic partners unknowingly gave him away. Mexican intelligence tracked her to an assignation with him in Tapalpa.
He was killed because someone he trusted was followed by someone he never knew was watching. In the weeks after his death, intelligence reports identified multiple senior figures as potential successors. Among them, Juan Carlos Valencia Gonzalez, known as El Cerro Tres, Oseguera's own stepson, through his marriage to Rosalinda Gonzalez Valencia. By March 2026, he had emerged as the most likely candidate to lead what remained of the organization. CJNG didn't collapse when El Mencho died. Organizations like this rarely do. The infrastructure, the territory, the networks, the revenue streams. Those don't disappear with one man. What changes is the stability, the internal discipline, the clarity of command that kept a military-structured cartel pointed in one direction. Whether L03 can hold it together is a question that will define the next chapter of this story. Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes built something that Mexico and the United States are still trying to fully understand. He took a military doctrine, applied it to a criminal organization, and created a force that shot down government helicopters, built its own armored vehicles, flew weaponized drones, and challenged the authority of the Mexican state directly and repeatedly for over a decade. He was a former cop who became the most dangerous cartel leader in the Western Hemisphere. And in the end, he was found the same way most of them are found. Not through superior intelligence or military pressure, through the people around him. If you want to go deeper on CJNG's future, the succession battle, or how El Mencho compares to El Chapo, that's coming. Subscribe so you don't miss it, and we'll see you on the next one.